Do you see how infinite you are? That line from the Vagabond manga hit me like a longsword strike. Because honestly, this isn't just manga. In my honest opinion, it's one of the best self-improvement books that I ever touched. And watching Takezo becoming Miyamoto Musashi is the path laid out before me, the path of mastery. And honestly, it reminds me of my own sword fighting and HEMA journey. So in this specific video, I'll talk about spoilers in the Vagabond manga. So if you haven't read it yourself, then I really recommend you to do it. So let's go with the video. Let's start from the beginning of the Takezo, the beast, so his beginnings. At the very beginning, Takezo, which of course later on becomes Musashi, Takezo, that's his original name of course, is a total violent beast, called even a demon by his neighbors in his village. He's a total hothead obsessed with becoming the most strongest person or sword fighter in the world. And of course he's feared by everyone. But there's one person who doesn't fear him. It's Otsu. And Otsu later on becomes very important to our main protagonist Takezo. But I'll talk about it later. What I like about the Takezo is his fire that's inside of him. So what I really like about the Takezo, even before his improvement, is that he's determined to become someone more, someone more powerful than he is right now. And he sees if he just sticks to it with just raw brute strength and grit, he'll become eventually stronger. And that's what most of us lack today. As I see it, most men today, they don't have this fire inside of themselves. They lost it in their adolescence years, inside of high school, around that time of their lives. So they stick to numbing themselves out with just shiny pixels in video games, chasing fake rewards, watching movies, and leveling up a protagonist in game because they don't have any objective whatsoever in their life. They just wake up, work, game, and sleep. And that's all. And of course, consume a lot of content and doing lots of bad habits. But here's my honest truth. To start something, you need that aggressive arrogance, that raw strength that will keep push you forward. Even when everyone thinks you're crazy, even when yourself think you're crazy. That really stick to me. Takezo was determined to become more, to become better. And honestly, that was totally me when I, for myself, started HEMA, so Historical European Martial Arts. I was arrogant and full of ego, so I swung very powerfully with sword, without any technique whatsoever. And of course, I tried to win against everyone that I faced, but that's not what it's all about. But still, that fire got my foot through the door, so I was determined to stick to it, even when I sucked at the beginning. In a fight, to die without regret, that's what it means to live. Point number 2, captured and reborn. So Takezo turning into Musashi. I love when the sound comes up. Smile more. So Takezo eventually, after returning from the battle of Sekigahara, but honestly he was too late to take part in it, he still tried to slash and kill off an enemy general because he was obsessed with getting stronger by killing everyone that he faced. When he finally returned to his village, of course the village of Miyamoto, he was captured, humiliated, and he was tied up, swinging from a tree for several days. So he was this close to dying. He was peacefully captured by a senior monk called Takuan. And Takuan would become the most, in my opinion, the most important person, mentor or teacher for our Takezo. Takuan, instead of killing Takezo for the crimes that he did, he forces Takezo to reflect, to see that he became a monster, a so-called demon. So Takuan plants a seed of wisdom into our protagonist, into Takezo, and Takezo becomes eventually Miyamoto Musashi. So he's changing his name. Of course, Takuan, being a troll, frees our protagonist Takezo and joins him on a path. And of course, Takezo is starting to change into Miyamoto Musashi. And the name change isn't just cosmetic. It's not just like some rank. It's symbolic as well. Because Takezo that day starts to fade off. He doesn't die overnight. He doesn't change into Musashi overnight, what I mean. He starts to get onto the, roughly, on the good path of self-improvement. Of course, Takuan, being a monk and the most powerful, in my opinion, character in that manga, spreads wisdom to our main protagonist and to the other characters as well. And Takuan's words really stick to the Takezo. Be aware of yourself and accept yourself as you are. That is where your training should begin. That's really powerful because that's the moment when the wild animal, the wild beast dies off and the real swordsman is born. And that's what happens in real training too, in sword fighting, I mean. That's when you have to drop your ego and finally stop chasing just victories in sparring. You have to become more humble to learn something more than just wild swinging. And to really start learning with humility. Of course, still keeping that fire to always come back to it. Once your heart is preoccupied, your sword will not be true. See everything in its entirety, effortlessly. That's what it really means to truly see. Point number 3. Friends and mirrors of Musashi. So Matahachi, Otsu and Takuan. Let's start from the Matahachi. Matahachi is Takezo's or Musashi's childhood best friend. And Matahachi always saw Takezo as someone more than him. Matahachi wanted to become stronger, to become this strong, just like Takezo. But Matahachi eventually becomes something totally opposite than Musashi. We can see in the story that Matahachi became someone who lies to others and lies to himself. He doesn't properly reflect on his actions and he doesn't face himself directly. He always makes excuses to himself. And Matahachi for me is what failure and mediocrity looks like. And I fear that most men today are just like Matahachi. So next in line is Otsu. Otsu is also a Musashi's childhood friend, and she's a potential love interest for our protagonist, for our Musashi. Otsu is one of the two characters that from the very beginning saw Takezo, eventually Musashi, someone more than just a beast. She saw a human under all of that thick skin of being strong and powerful. She hadn't feared him at all. She saw what potential Musashi had inside of him. Coming to the Takuan, so the most powerful mentor that I've read about, he speaks wisdom into our Musashi. He always reminds our Musashi that strength without wisdom is just distraction. In life, you'll probably meet lots of people like Matahachi who run from their own potential for their whole life. They're lying to themselves by fueling their own potential into the things that doesn't change anything in their lives and doesn't improve them. And probably you'll meet someone one day like Otsu, who sees you for yourself, who sees a potential in you when you don't. And the most needed and powerful individuals that you'll have to eventually meet are mentors and your teachers, who always speak wisdom into you by not giving you direct answers to your questions, but asking you very interesting questions for you to reflect upon. And that's why I've built From Gamer to Swordsman, because too many guys surround themselves by people like Matahachi who don't stick to their path that they chose, the hard path of sweat and bleeding into your mastery. Inside, there's more people like you who already started practicing longsword by themselves. So check out the link in the description, because inside there are men who hold each other accountable. So point number 4 is Musashi's obsessions to become invincible under the heavens. But what it truly means that his fire turned into something unrefined. He lost his true way. Musashi becomes obsessed with chasing this title because he feels like it's salvation for him. But later on, he realizes that invincible is just a mere word, doesn't mean anything. So he compares it to the heat haze. When you try to chase it, it looks solid. But when you finally reach it, it fades away the second when you touch it. Of course, being a swordsman, a master in it even, and surviving lots of different duels in this story, for me it doesn't really link to the mastery of the sword, but it reminded me of today's culture of men who seek themselves by chasing fake titles in games, in gaming, becoming and leveling up their character, their protagonist in just on a computer screen. And after turning off their games and maybe going to their beds, they finally see that it didn't change anything in their lives. In other words, I don't tell you that you can't relax after the whole day's work. What I mean is that you need to find yourself something to master. It could be anything. For me, I finally realized it was training and fighting with longsword, of course, in historical European martial arts. And that's what I feel would really improve me as a person, as a swordsman. But yeah, today culture and today's system just tries to feed you these just empty things, like buy our games, buy our console, buy our new PC, so that you could play better and more fun games. But at the end, it feels empty. Because the real substance of it all is chasing mastery over fake titles. That's what truly differs from these things. Mastery never ends. It doesn't have titles. It doesn't have levels to it. It's just the never-ending path that makes you more present. It makes you to see clearly everything around you. More than just a single tree leaf. You'll see a whole tree or maybe the whole forest. Inside I am infinite. Within emptiness exists everything. So point number 5 is enemies being teachers. Let's start from the spear master, who's also a monk, called Ishun Hozoin, who always kept our Musashi at bay with his long spear. And that's what I really liked about this exchange, that we clearly see the difference and the importance of distance in an actual sword fight, or melee fight if you can call it like that, because Musashi is always using his katana and the opponent has just a longer spear. So Musashi learns that distance is everything, and eventually hacking and slashing through nearly everyone that he faces. Let's talk about the Yoshoka clan arc. He fought off against Seijuro, I can remember that, the head of Yoshoka clan, and eventually his brother. And nearly at the end of this whole arc, the last main head of the whole Yoshoka swordsman school in Kyoto. And he made a vow to kill Musashi with 70 members of the Yoshoka school, to face him all at once. And Musashi's endurance and battle against impossible odds of 70 men all at once leaves him broken, leaves him bleeding, and even incapacitated in some level. But Musashi, even before that huge fight, after Takuan's wisdom, starts to see that he's thankful for his enemies. He sees that every defeat that he got was a gift from his opponents that made him to reflect and eventually change his tactics or even mindset about his sword fighting path. Musashi, after Takuan's wisdom, finally reflects and thanks his opponents for they shaped him who he became. And that's one of my favorite truths, because even your worst opponents shape your growth. They are a part of your growth. So every tough sparring partner, every loss you ever had, there are gifts, because without these gifts you'll always stay the same. Point number 6 is kindness as strength. For Musashi to become kind, he had to become stronger. All strong people are kind. Musashi, after facing off 70 of Yoshoka members and nearly dying, Takuan notices that Musashi, after just maybe a few years of sword fighting journey, became more calmer, became more kind, and says, or maybe Musashi admits, that all strong people are kind. So Musashi becomes calmer, gentler, but paradoxically more stronger. And that's what mastery really looks like, because at first, at the beginning, you're fueled by rage and fire inside of you to always come back to practice, But the true strength, it's control, it's kindness. In HEMA, it's especially obvious because the best fighters I know, my coaches and masters, they're the most kind people. These people aren't there to hurt you. They're so powerful, they're so strong that they want you to rise with them. They want to pull you up to their level. The 7th point is endless path of mastery. After years of constant struggle, fighting and killing, and the spiral of death and killing, Musashi realizes that he's still walking the same path of mastery. Because to mastery there's no end, there's no completion. There's no such thing as a final level or a final boss in your own mastery. Because these things are just artificial. They're made to hook you in with all kinds of fake rewards and fake progress. But true mastery has no end point, has no end game. And even Takuan reminds our Musashi to just smile more, to just be happy that he gets a chance to walk this path always. And that's what I really love about the Vagabond, because it shows that life isn't about reaching some end point, that it's not about reaching the end, because there's no end. It reminds me that it's all about walking the path with awareness, with gratitude, and hell yeah, even smiling along the way, always. So mastery isn't about reaching your end point. It's about constant struggle, constant grit, even when you don't feel like it. Always taking the initiative and being aware about it. Having this gratitude inside of yourself to just having a chance to go at it, to always try to beat your opponent, but most of all, beat yourself in something more meaningful than just empty games. And that's why I created From Gamer to Swordsman, where inside there are lots of guys who finally stopped playing video games and started to fuel their energy and their passion into a longsword, into training specifically longsword techniques. Of course, at the beginning they're training by themselves, and that's what this program is all about. It's about getting you off of your video games and starting your longsword journey without any experience, without any technique, but sticking to it with the fire inside of your heart. That's the ideal program for beginners who want to get into historical European martial arts eventually, and that they feel that they can acquire this mastery over something more just powerful. And yeah, I'll be honest, swinging a sword and knowing how to fight with it is a lot of fun. It gives me energy to wake up every morning and to strive to become a more powerful swordsman. And that's why recently I've finally registered for my first tournaments, which are Turnhau and Katzenschlag. I even vowed for myself to accept any challenge no matter the odds. But that's the Black Templars vibe, not for that video. So yeah, check out the link in the description to find more about it. Can you see how infinite you are? And remember, always take the initiative.